Welcome, everyone, to Buddhist Center. My name is Jeff Allen, and this evening, once again, we're looking at Panchen Sonandrapa's general meaning of perfection, and specifically the section on the awakening mind, or Bodhicitta. So we're very fortunate, as I always say, to be able to study something that is the only thing that will allow us to become a Buddha. If we don't enter the door into the Mahayana, it's not possible for us to become a Buddha. And the only door into the Mahayana is bodhicitta, as we've learned. So it's just, we're so fortunate to be learning how to create the causes and conditions for the arisal of such a beautiful mind that comes out of the beautiful mind of renunciation. So let's just get started. Let's not waste any time. So we'll, as we always do, get into a physical posture that is intentional, that will allow us to have clarity of mind and set a foundation for us as beginners to eventually be able to do the higher practices, and we won't have to relearn any physical postures. So the posture that we always get into is called the 7-point Vairocana posture. This was passed down by many of the great masters, and we find it in Lama Tsongkhapa's text. We find it in Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. We find it in Kamalashila's Stages of Meditation. So we find the importance of this posture presented in so many different places scripturally. So it's wonderful that we have the opportunity to sit like the great holy beings sat, to be able to achieve the same realizations that the great holy beings achieved. So the 7-point Vairocana posture, we've gone over many times. We put our legs preferably into the Vajra posture, but we do the best we can, whether it's half lotus or we just have our legs cross-legged, or if we have to put them on the floor because of some physical limitations, we do the best that we can. So we get into our legs into a cross-legged posture. We put our hands in our lap with our right on top of the left with our thumbs touching, making kind of a diamond. Our back very straight. It's said that our vertebrae should be like a stack of coins, and our shoulders in a very comfortable position, with our own, almost allowing for our arms between our comfort of our shoulders and our hand posture to make a bow. So we sit in that. We have our shoulders in a comfortable position with our head slightly tilted forward, not back, not too far forward, just slightly tilted forward, with our eyes at a 45-degree angle, slightly opened, pointed at our nose. Eventually, we're looking for all of our sensory consciousness to shut off because we're meditating with our mental consciousness. So we're putting ourselves into a physical posture, including our eyes, so that we can eventually just do the meditation with our mental consciousness and shut off all the physical consciousness and the perceptions that they have. And then the last feature, after we have our eyes slightly open, focused at the nose 45-degree, is our mouth in a comfortable position, with our tongue on the top of the roof, kind of against the teeth. And this will allow for our mouth to not get full of saliva. And then if we add the eighth part of the posture, which is the breathing, we breathe in and out through our nose. And by doing this, this will allow our mouth not to dry out. So we have a combination of things that are allowing our mouth not to get too saturated and not too dried out. And this, along with all the rest of the posture, will allow us eventually to sit for very long periods of time, and not have to feel any physical discomfort. This is why we get into this 7-point Vairocana posture. So we're in this 7-point Vairocana posture, and begin to breathe in and out of your nose. Breathing in, breathe all the way to the top, filling the diaphragm, extending the stomach as you breathe in. Imagine the breath going all the way in, filling that diaphragm all the way in a deep breath, and then exhaling and counting 1. So we're only going to be breathing through our nose. So we'll do that for a moment, and then we'll add a visualization of Buddha Shakyamuni to this meditation. So we're in the 7-point Vairocana posture. We add the breathing, making it the 8-point posture. And now we'll focus on the breath and the counting. Now bring to your mind the image of Buddha Shakyamuni, about 2 inches tall, eye height in front of you, about 2 feet away. Bring this image to your mind, radiant, beautiful, beautiful robes, a light body, 3-dimensional. Imagine Buddha Shakyamuni on a throne, supported by snow lions if you can. It's so wonderful that we can singly focus on such a holy being. We've been able to calm our minds down enough to think of how excellent that being is, the reliable guide that Buddha Shakyamuni is. Think about why we came to Buddhism, why we came to a Buddhist class. Was it a source of suffering or dissatisfaction or just curiosity? Because we needed answers. We recognize that the Buddha stated first that this is the superior truth of suffering. Think about birth, aging, sickness, and death, the experiences you've had in relation to those things, how much suffering they caused. We come into this world suffering, sometimes not breathing, have to be hit to breathe, crying, feeling so alone. And then momentarily we get older. We don't see it. We feel we never get old. We have no control over that. We get sick. As we get older and older, we get sick more. And then we eventually die. We meet with unpleasant things or separated from pleasant things and don't get what we want. We have these aggregates, this body, the mental and physical parts of our being that are the basis for suffering. And dependence upon these aggregates, these parts, I suffer because my consciousness has afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience. I suffer and don't have bliss. There's no certainty in any of the basis in cyclic existence. My friends of this life, maybe my enemies in my next, closest person to me in this life, I may never know again until I'm Buddha. I have such dissatisfaction throughout this whole process, never satiated. And the Buddha said, this is the real illness. We're comfortable, we have what we want, and we still want more. We're not satisfied. We're reborn again and again. We have these bodies that we shuck off after we die. Now we're in the higher realms. We may stop breathing, even in an hour, and suddenly have to experience a realm we never believed was possible. We thought it was a fairy tale. Suffering of the hell and hungry ghosts we can't see. So we believe that it really isn't real, and it's not something that in an hour or two I could be experiencing. I may even have higher realm rebirths and think that I'm living a life of no suffering and never will suffer again, only to find out I'll have to experience a suffering I could never imagine. And I'll have no companions to help me through this whole journey. I'll shuck off my loved ones, just like my bodies. I won't see those ones I call, this is the person I love, again. They'll have different names. This is who I love will be shucked off. And the Buddha summarizes by saying, you have the suffering of suffering, which is the pain, the physical and mental pain we all know about. The suffering of change, which is the happiness that's contaminated, that always turns into suffering. The bait that keeps us in cyclic existence. And the real thing that the Buddha taught us was that the pervasive compounded suffering was what he meant when he said, this is the superior truth of suffering. Forced by our karma and afflictions, again and again and again, we have to take on a set of aggregates, contaminated aggregates that suffer in all the ways just mentioned. The Buddha said, this is the real suffering, this cycle that happens over and over and over again: birth, aging, sickness, and death, separation from the pleasant, meeting with the unpleasant, etc., over and over and over again, propelled by ignorance, inappropriate thinking, karma, afflictions and karma. This happens over and over and over again. And this is what the Buddha started to tell us about when he said, this is the superior truth of origin. The Buddha pointed out and identified exactly the predicament that we're in. And if we think about it, we'll agree with him. We have these things. We've experienced these things. We've seen these things happen before our eyes. These things are all impermanent. We know all impermanent things have causes because they are results. Any result has a cause. So the Buddha said, this is the superior truth of origin, and showed us what the cause of that first truth is, what the cause of the truth of suffering is. He stated that it was our ignorance, the grasping at the I as being truly established, the self-grasping that then made me think inappropriately, have afflictions arise, engage in contaminated action, and then cyclic existence is there. And the Buddha said, this is the superior truth of origin. This is the cause of your suffering. This is the cause of your samsara, the ignorance that grasps at the I as being truly established. And the Buddha stated that all of this can end because we know that results are dependent upon causes. So if a cause isn't present, a result can't occur. So the Buddha said, all of this can end. If you get rid of the origin of suffering, there is no actual suffering. And you can achieve, by just doing that, by just having wisdom and abiding nirvana. And this is how you do it. So the Buddha said, this is the superior truth of cessation, and showed us that it was possible to end all of our suffering, and then stated that this is the superior truth of path. This is the path that I realized. This is the nature of reality that I realized. This is the antidote to the cause of suffering that I realized. So if you rely upon this as I did, you'll achieve the state that I have, a freedom from suffering from cyclic existence. So we feel very good. We just went through a whole process of understanding our suffering. I started to have our mind feel a little bit low, and we think of these things. Our self-cherishing attitude starts to be touched a little bit when we think about all of these sufferings that we have to experience. It doesn't feel good. We add the little wisdom and think about what causes it, and then hope that, yes, it can end by relying on a path. So we know we have a reliable guide. And the Buddha tells us something else. The Buddha says that if you want to achieve the state that I've achieved, full Buddhahood, not only freedom from suffering, but also the bliss, the infinite happiness, then it will be necessary for you not only to have wisdom, but also have method. And the Buddha said that you would have to learn how to want all beings to be a Buddha. And you would want to have to know what that meant and put others' needs before your own if you want to achieve the complete state that I have. So we think about who those others are. We think about our friends, our loved ones, those closest to us. We think about all of the sufferings that we just thought about ourselves. We think about the 8 sufferings and the 6 sufferings and those 3 sufferings we just went over so clearly. And we think that each and every one of those beings has to and will have to experience those things. I think how sad that is that each of those people we care so much about have to experience that. When our loved ones have even a headache, we feel so badly. And now we start to think, oh, they have to experience all of these terrible things, birth, aging, sickness, and death, over and over and over again, being separated from friends, such uncertainty, never being satisfied. Oh, how they suffer. We think about strangers and oh, how they suffer also. Those people that we walk by, we may not know their names. We may not know exactly who they are. The birds that fly by, the worms we see in our garden, we don't know who they are. They're strangers, but they're beings that have all been our mothers. So we start to think about strangers and recognize that they have all those types of suffering we just thought about that we have and that we definitely want to emerge from. We know that we want to get out of cyclic existence. We know we don't want the suffering of the lower realms or the higher realms. We know there's such dissatisfaction. And we know that they also have that same dissatisfaction. Then we move on to those people that we label enemies, and we see if that name enemy really is a realistic name. We think that since beginningless time, I've been born again and again and again. This consciousness has no beginning. This moment's consciousness was caused by a previous moment's consciousness, caused by a previous moment's consciousness. This life was caused by this life was caused by this life's consciousness was caused by the intermediate state's consciousness, which was caused by the previous life's consciousness, which was caused by the intermediate state, the previous life's consciousness, et cetera, et cetera. And we recognize that we've inhabited so many different forms, and every sentient being has been so kind to us at some point in time or another. They've all taken care of us when we were so vulnerable. When we had no protector, every sentient being has been that being for us. And while they were taking care of us, and they were loving us so much, we felt so loved and cared for. So it was our karma to interact with that being like that, right at that moment. And now we have a being in our life that we label an enemy. They're out of control by their karma and their afflictions. It's nothing personal. We're out of control because we have to receive something that we don't want because of our karma and afflictions. We're both out of control. If somebody was drugged that we love so much and they started acting like they were taken over by a demon, we'd feel such compassion for them. We wouldn't call them an enemy. We'd call a doctor. Just because we've forgotten how kind they were to us, we now label them enemy because of our ignorance. We know that those beings are just as important as we are. Every being has Buddha nature. That person I label as enemy may be the one who really, really will become a Buddha before me and be the one who helps me to become a Buddha. So we start to shuck off all of these labels and have an equal desire to benefit all of those types of beings. And then all the other beings that we can't even fit into those categories because our mind isn't big enough, right? Even a Hinayana foe destroyer's mind isn't big enough to see all sentient beings. So we just add on those extra sentient beings and we start to think, man, I want to be out of cyclic existence. I want to be free from suffering. I want happiness so badly. All sentient beings want happiness, want to be free from suffering so badly. We all go through so many different adventures in life that end up failing us to try to seek out happiness. We all have this in common. How nice it would be if all sentient beings had happiness in the causes of happiness. May they have happiness in the causes of happiness. I will be a cause for them to have happiness in the causes of happiness. May all the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas please bless me to be able to have the strength and courage to bring all sentient beings to a state of happiness. We think about all of those sentient beings and say how nice it would be if they were free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. I'll be a cause for them to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas please bless me to be able to have the courage, the strength to be able to bring them to a place that's free from suffering. And now we have a sense of courage, and we say to ourselves, oh, I want to be out of cyclic existence so badly, and I want them to be out so badly. I'm going to get them out. I'm going to take it upon myself, the task of freeing each and every one of these sentient beings from suffering. And then we recognize that we're incapable of doing that. We recognize that we have all of these sufferings, that we're in cyclic existence, that we have ignorance that grasps at true establishment. Therefore, we have cyclic existence. We haven't provided an antidote to our ignorance. And the proof is that we're here suffering. So we aren't a reliable guide. We don't know what each and every single sentient being needs in order to be helped. We don't even believe in realms that exist because they seem like a fairy tale to us. How could we imagine going to those places we don't even believe in to help those beings? We have so many obstacles and so many barriers because we're not Buddhas, because we don't know even how to get to the places to help them all. A Buddha can emanate a body for each and every sentient being. A Buddha's speech answers the questions of all sentient beings simultaneously in all of their languages. We can't do that. A Buddha's mind is omniscient and loves all sentient beings, knows exactly what they need. At that moment, wants to help them because of that loving concern that the Buddha has. We have those obstacles. We don't have that. We don't have the ability to engage in enlightened activities that the Buddha has. And when we think very clearly about that, it propels us into this urgency, this need to become a Buddha immediately for the sake of all sentient beings. If we really want to have freedom from suffering and the highest amount of happiness for ourselves, and we want all the beings around us to be able to experience that too, and we want to be part of that, we have to become a Buddha. So now we say, may I become a Buddha for the sake of everyone. May I become a Buddha for everyone's sake, leaving out no beings, having no bias. So how will I become a Buddha? I'll have to engage in the stages of the path that lead to Bodhicitta, and then I'll have to engage in the stages of the path of the Bodhisattva. How will I learn about these things? I learn by going to a class. I learn by reciting these prayers and understanding them more and more and more each time. When I'm not in a class, I engage in the practices and I engage in study. And I'm doing this in order to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Start to saturate your mind with that every activity that I do will be for the sake of becoming a Buddha for all sentient beings. Everything in my life I do, because there's nothing in my life that I search after in terms of happiness that's real. It's all contaminated because I have this ignorance that grasps at true establishment. I have this foggy lens. I can't even experience a true happiness. So here I am tonight, and I'm about to recite prayers, and I'm about to understand these teachings for the sake of all sentient beings. So we set this motivation very strongly. And now we imagine that in the space in front of us, all the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas, all the holy beings, we imagine His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and we imagine Khenchen Geshe Wandak, remember him smiling, so radiant, all of the holy beings, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, the Dema Locha Rinpoche, Geshe Lobsang Gompo, Geshe Aga, Geshe Mala Tenzin Ladran La, all of these holy beings, we just imagine them in the space in front of us, the profound view lineage, the extensive deeds lineage, Lord Atisha, Lama Tsongkhapa, all these holy beings are here, all the beings of the highest yoga tantra, yogic tantra, performance tantra, and action tantra, all of these beings are here, the 35 Buddhas, all the protectors. Just imagine these holy beings are all in the space in front of you and are so happy that you're here and that you're attending something that will make you become a Buddha. Because all of the holy beings only care about one thing, and that's making it so that you become a Buddha for the sake of making it so that you become a Buddha, so that you can be free from suffering and that you can have the bliss that they have. So now imagine that they're so happy. Next, imagine that all sentient beings are surrounding you and you've brought them here. You can imagine that you've, have infinite amounts of arms that have reached out to the hell-hungry ghost animal, human, demigods, and gods realms and grabbed all of these beings and brought them here. And they're all assembled around you, and you're about to lead all of these beings in prayer, and you're about to attend this teaching and think about this teaching with all of these beings around you. Now all the gurus and Buddhas and Bodhisattvas experience this bliss that you can just see it in front of you. This just immense amount of happiness, because now everything that they want is happening. All sentient beings are assembled in one place, and they're all learning how to become a Buddha. They're all learning about Bodhicitta. They're all learning the stages of the path shared in common with beings of small, medium, and great capacity. So the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas are so happy because they know that that's the only way that any being will be able to be free. We will be able to have a freedom from fear and infinite happiness. So from that bliss they're experiencing, imagine that light rays and nectars of white, red, and blue respectively start to bubble out and just emanate out of all of these holy beings. Now imagine that you and all the sentient beings around you in cyclic existence have a white Om on your crown, a red Ah at your throat, and a blue Hum at your heart. Om representing your body, Ah representing your speech, blue Hum representing your mind. So now imagine that from the bliss that these Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are experiencing, because they're so happy that we're all assembled here doing virtuous things, all these light rays and nectars begin to transform into Om Ah Hum. The white light rays and nectars transform into Oms, and dissolve into our crowns and all sentient beings' crowns and purify our bodies. Imagine that the red light rays and nectars turn into red Ahs and go to our throats and all sentient beings' throats and purify our speech. And the blue light rays and nectars go to our hearts, where we have the blue Hum. They transform into Hums and purify our minds. So imagine that these Om, Ah, Hum, white, red, blue, respectively, are showering out of the sky and almost like snow in a blizzard, and coming down and dissolving into our body, speech, and mind. Om, Ah, Hum at our crown, throat, heart, respectively. So now we'll hold this visualization as we imagine this flurry of virtue, this flurry of purification taking place, and this immense amount of bliss that we are experiencing from the purification. The Gurus and Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are experiencing because we're getting a purification. And now we imagine that our whole experience, sentient experience, and all the Gurus and Buddhas and Bodhisattvas experience is bliss. And as we do this visualization, let's begin to recite the Heart Sutra, and imagine that we're all reciting this together. The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way. Seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics, there is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I dhatu up to no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable and true complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering, should be known as truth, since there is no deception. The Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way: the path of accumulation, the path of preparation, the path of seeing, the path of meditation, the path of no more learning. Deyata ongade gade maragade marazangade bodhizayada ongade gade maragade Varazangade bodhizayada ongade gade varagade varazangade bodhizayada ongade gade varagade Harazangadi bodhizayada om gade gade varagade varazangadi bodhizayada. Thus, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas would rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Ngala jube ne jodan ba ne ngje du je ai du do jian zhe la ma yi ve jian zi ne zo ngan zhe zo la zhe zi lo aga samara de jan. Aga samara de janara samara yame de adong gade gade baragade barazangade bodizo baba gojo sanji gaye de bedoje je loba doje mebo doje shewa doje Ragi baji mete beja danji je dingo ye zo giri danja je 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 wa da me do ni beja da je wa da de ba ja je bo da da ja ji ja ji de ja den da de le zo. Now we make a mandala offering as a request for teaching. Imagine that all beings around us are making a mandala offering. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jewel mandala to you, precious Guru. Idam Guru Radha Mandala Gam Niradayami. Nanye Jadan Ye Janala Janju Badu Danye Jazuji Dagi Jiji Jibe Zananji Rala Benje Zanye Rubajo Zanye Jadan Ye Janala Janju Badu Danye Jazuji Dagi Jiji Jibe Zananji Rala Benje Zanye Rubajo Zanye Janana Ye Janala Janju Badu Danye Jazuji Dagi Jiji Jibe Zananji Rala Benje Zanye Rubajo. The one who is transformed into the reliable guide motivated by altruism to benefit sentient beings, the teacher Sugata and protector, to you I make prostrations. The one who has eliminated the web of conceptualizations and is endowed with the divine bodies of the vast and profound, who eternally shines forth the forever noble light rays, to you the Buddha I make prostrations. Inspired by wisdom and compassion today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind of full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings hear and understand this teaching in their individual languages. So we made it again to another Thursday. So fortunate when we think about the death will come and nothing can stop it, as we're talking about on Sundays. We don't know when we're going to die, and there's so many supporting reasons that we can look at for those first two facts. And the only thing that, when that time comes, that can help us is the Dharma, and the Dharma that we practice. And we're so fortunate that not only are we getting to hear the Dharma, we're not only getting to hear about something that will be the only thing that can help us, we're hearing the highest kind of Dharma, and that's the great vehicle Dharma. We're hearing the Dharma that can really make us take advantage of this life of leisure and opportunity that we have. We're hearing a Dharma that can make us not only be free from suffering, but also achieve infinite happiness and become the most reliable being that exists. We can, and we all have Buddha nature. We all have this potential to become a Buddha. So we're not engaging in something foolish. We're engaging in something which will produce the results that it says that it can. And the Buddha produced the results that we want. The Buddha is the reliable guide because the Buddha has achieved that state that when we read about it, it's just so amazing. Even reading about the state of a bodhisattva and what a bodhisattva can do for others and how they feel such joy all the time, no matter what they're doing, right? They have this joyous perseverance. It's occurring at all times, no matter what. Even when they're enduring something that maybe is hard, it says they have more happiness than, some superior beings who are in a lesser vehicle. So we're so fortunate, right? That we're practicing something that leads to that kind of being, whether it's the bodhisattva, right? Because we know the entrance, we become a bodhisattva when we realize bodhicitta. So we're learning how we become bodhisattvas tonight, because we're learning about how you get bodhicitta. So what we do know also, before we get started with the body of the bodhicitta text, is that bodhicitta requires the teaching shared in common with beings of small capacity and the practitioner to have a desire to emerge already from the lower realms of cyclic existence. So that practitioner has that under their belt. This practitioner who could get bodhicitta has already realized that the lower realms are no good for them. And they've realized it in a very clear manner. And they've realized that the Buddha is the reliable guide by using logic and reasoning, and that the Buddha taught karma, and that the Buddha taught impermanence, and that we have a chance to go to the lower realms. And this practitioner has mastered all of that and said, I don't want to go there. So that's the first step to getting ready to be able to be a bodhisattva, is that teaching shared in common with beings of small capacity, where we want to definitely emerge from the worst types of cyclic existence. And we know that we could experience them because we've now got an education in the small scope. We have to be that person already to be a bodhisattva. We also have to be the kind of person that thought about those things in the small scope, but then realized, hey, the higher realms of cyclic existence aren't very fancy either. I'm in the higher realms of cyclic existence, and I experience birth, aging, sickness, death, et cetera, that we just went over very extensively. I understand how all of that works. I understand the 3 highest higher trainings. I understand, what I have to do in order to emerge from this whole state of the 6 realms of cyclic existence. Because I understand the teachings shared in common with beings of medium capacity. I've mastered those teachings. And now, in dependence upon the teachings shared in common with beings of small and medium capacity, I now have renunciation. I now have day and night this desire, as Lama Tsongkhapa says in the 3 principal paths, this desire to get out of cyclic existence. We define renunciation as day and night wanting to get out of cyclic existence. So in dependence upon the small and medium scope teachings, those teachings that are shared in common with the small and medium scope, we develop renunciation. And it's from that renunciation, it's from that understanding of our own suffering and our own desire to emerge from cyclic existence that we then turn to others, like we do in the meditation that leads up to this. We turn to others and recognize that they're experiencing exactly the same thing that I am. They want happiness and the causes of happiness just like I do. So we turn towards them and start to think about others. Because up till then, we've only thought about ourselves. We've only thought about ourselves getting out of cyclic existence. Now we take that idea to emerge and we turn it into compassion, which turns the lens that's like, I need to be free. slowly starts to turn it towards others in a limited way, and then in a very grand way, and shines it on them and says they should be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. And it eventually ends up, their needs are more important than mine, because that's how I really meet my own needs. That's where we eventually end up. But it has to come from that renunciation. It has to come from that desire to emerge for ourselves, and that pure education, that pure foundation. And if we have that, the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment and equalizing and exchanging self with others will be so powerful when you sit down to start to do it, that it will make all of the difference. And so many people jump ahead and start to try to do these meditations without thoroughly understanding suffering, without thoroughly understanding your own nature. And Shantideva says it's preposterous. If you haven't even thought about dreamed of your own situation, right? How do you imagine someone else's? So our knowledge of self, right, is what then allows us to understand others and have that empathy, and then that turns into compassion, right? That turns into this desire to help them. So when we look at Panchen Sunandrapa's general meaning of perfection, if Panchen Sunandrapa is here in the room teaching us, he'd say, okay, so if you now have renunciation, then start doing this, right? And not that you can't do this until you have renunciation. We familiarize ourselves with the whole path. And this will help us, right? Want to renounce cyclic existence, because we see sentient beings that are suffering. So it'll help us with our smaller scope and medium scope teachings. When we relate to others and their suffering, it makes our renunciation greater. In Lama Tsongkhapa's text, one of the things that's negated is that there's a view out there that bodhisattvas don't really have renunciation. And Lama Tsongkhapa smashes it to bits and says, no, bodhisattvas have more renunciation than you who are judging bodhisattvas. It's coming from a lesser vehicle view that says the bodhisattvas don't really even renounce cyclic existence. They just jump in. They love it. So they don't renounce it. And Lama Tsongkhapa says, korsum, as they say in debate when somebody says something preposterous, korsum. Lama Tsongkhapa says, no, the bodhisattva, because he understands the full amounts of suffering, has more renunciation than you do, actually. Their renunciation is so much more powerful. And that's how that turns into that more powerful desire to help that can turn into bliss. And that's why you don't have it. Sorry, you have happiness, right? You've gotten rid of the coarse self-cherishing attitude, but there's that subtle one there. You've still discarded. You've still you're oblivious to other beings. You're not throwing them out anymore. You're an arhat now. And you've gotten rid of the coarse self-cherishing attitude. So you're no longer just like, don't give him that. That's mine. Now you're just like, you're taking the only glass of water and don't realize everyone else around you is thirsty. You're just oblivious to them. If you're in this kind of nirvana with remainder, if you're a Hinayana foe destroyer, you're just oblivious. You're not actively disregarding others anymore. You've gotten rid of that. You have immeasurable love and compassion. You're not actively just disregarding them, but you're just oblivious to them. Like, yeah, I've got mine. Yeah, just oblivious. So it's a little bit of a difference than like they want everyone to be happy. Like there isn't like, I need to be happy, not them. That's not there. But it's just an oblivious kind of state. So how do we get to that state, right? That is the fullest amount of happiness, that isn't just an incomplete happiness. And how do we get to that state where we can be of most help to sentient beings? And the only way we can do so is through bodhicitta. So Panchen Sunandrapa, in the general meaning of perfection, divides this into 5 categories. We've gone over this, but let's look at the body of the text. First, we have basis. So we learned what the basis, mental and physical basis is for the arisal of aspiring and engaged bodhicitta. So we went over that very thoroughly. And now we're in the causes section. We went over general causes. Now we're in specific causes. And then later we'll get into the nature, which is like definitions. And then we get into the divisions. and then benefits. And we've gone over the benefits so many times, and we could never repeat the benefits of the mind that aspires to enlightenment too many times. So it's so wonderful that we're going to get to that section and be able to go for it and really look at all of them according to the great Lamrim texts. So, but let's go to where we are. So we're in the specific causes section of how you get bodhicitta in Panchen Sonandrapa's General Meaning of Perfection, which is a commentary on the Abhisamalamkara, Maitreya's Ornament for Clear Realization, which is a summary commentary on all of the Perfection of Wisdom sutras. So, the 100,000 verse, the 20,000 verse, 8,000 verse, and then the very summarized Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, the Heart Sutra, of course. So Panchen Sonandrapa, this text is the general meaning of Maitreya's Abhisamalamkara, which divides all of the Perfection of Wisdom teachings into 70 topics, basically, if we look at it in one way. And this Panchen Sonandrapa text explains those topics. Bodhicitta is one among them. So here we go. So we're on the equalizing and exchanging self with others method for achieving bodhicitta. So we went over the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment already. And now we're in equalizing and exchanging self with others. And then after we finish both of these presentations, we're going to learn the very wonderful secret teaching on how to combine these two. And we know we're so fortunate to be able to hear this teaching, because this was not a teaching that was outwardly given. The equalizing and exchanging self with others teaching was the less public among the teachings that Lord Atisha received from the master Salimpa. So we're so fortunate that Dron Tompa, who received them from great master Atisha, passed them down to Potawa and the masters, who then got them to us via Khenser Geshe Wandak. So here they are, they're in our laps. And now Geshe Aga, who's, teaching me now, is teaching me this section, was Geshe Lobsang Gompo's root student. Geshe Lobsang Gompo was Rinpoche's root student, before we knew Rinpoche. He had a root student who was Geshe Lobsang Gompo, who took care of him. And, even when they were in, I've recently heard, in the jungle, and everyone had to take turns doing different work, Geshe Gompo would do Rinpoche's work for him. So Rinpoche could continue his studies, because Geshe Gompo knew Rinpoche was so special, and he didn't want him to miss anything he could teach him. And that was really special when I heard that. Even when he had kitchen work, Geshe Gompo would go do the kitchen work for Rinpoche. Not every, it's not that Rinpoche didn't ever work, but Geshe Gompo was so kind, and he was Geshe Gompo passed. Geshe Gompo was my teacher also. In Drepung, and then he came back here and spent some years with us, and such a highly realized master. It's so strange to think that, then Rinpoche was his teacher, right? Because they were just such great beings. But you would see Geshe Gompo with Rinpoche and just be so humble and look at him just the same way that we do, even though Geshe Gompo was so realized. So Geshe Gompo taught me sections of this text now, and Rinpoche taught me this text. And now Geshe Aga is teaching this text. So I feel so fortunate. We're all so fortunate. And you're all reaping the benefits of all of this because of dependent origination. I've got to learn more. I'm going to have to talk in front of you. So I'm talking with Aga. So I really appreciate this opportunity and really cherish it, because we're not learning the ordinary everyday stuff that you learn. So we learn the equalizing and exchanging self with others practice. We could divide into 9 categories. So what are those 9 categories? Equalizing self and others, reflecting on the demerits of cherishing oneself, reflecting on the merits of cherishing others, and then taking the suffering of others with great compassion, giving happiness to others and wishing them love, or giving through love. And then we go through the actual exchange of self and others, a special kind of recollection of the kindness of others. It's even bigger than the recollection of the kindness of beings in the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment. And then we have this really powerful, I will take on the task of freeing them all, extraordinary attitude, altruism that takes place, which is number 8, and then number 9 is bodhicitta. So the 7-point cause and effect, we have these 6 causes, right, that result, and then the 7th, which is the result of bodhicitta. Here we have 9, in this kind of presentation, we have 9 categories. 8 of them are the things that lead up to the 9th bodhicitta. So we went over the first category where we equalize self and others. We came to the conclusion that all beings are as important as we are. And we came up with a lot of logic and reasoning. Anyone who's new to this can go back into the videos and see all of that logic that's presented about emptiness, about Buddha nature, and about the desire for happiness and so forth, and the desire to be free from suffering. Reflecting on the demerits of cherishing yourself, we see that the self-centered attitude has been our foe since beginningless time. It's caused us to make bad decisions over and over and over again that have not led to our happiness, have only led to our suffering. And then Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, all the misery in the world comes from cherishing ourselves. All the happiness of the world comes from cherishing others. And the Guru, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas cherish others. We cherish ourselves. Look at the difference. It's so clear, the happiness. Look at the difference. Rinpoche cherished others. I cherish myself. Look at the difference. Look at the joy that Rinpoche, just emanated and just always had. I don't have that. Because I cherish myself, I don't cherish others. So it's so clear when we start to see why these holy beings like His Holiness the Dalai Lama are so happy, and why Rinpoche was so happy. It's because he cherished others. It's because he got himself out of the way. So we look at the benefits of cherishing others. That's the next step that we went over. We see these great beings that cherish others, Gandhi and Jesus Christ, right? And Khyentse Geshe Wandak and the Dalai Lama, and I hear Mahavir, right? And all of these other holy beings that were so kind to others and put others' needs before their own, and Mother Teresa, right? These holy beings, and we see the difference between us and them. So we really see the benefits of cherishing other beings when we look at the difference between those others and us. Just to let you know, if you are on Instagram and following this right now, it's probably going to end in a couple of minutes. But if you go to Facebook, Tara, T-A-R-A, new word mantra, M-A-N-T-R-A, Tara Mantra. We're live on there right now too. They only give me an hour on Instagram. So if it cuts you off, just go to Tara Mantra Facebook, or you can go to www.buddhistcenter.com, and you can go right to the live link right on the Zoom, and you can hop right in on the Zoom right now. www.buddhistcenter.com. I think the website's right on the face page of the Instagram. Okay, so sorry about the interruption. So I just want to make sure anybody who wants to hear these teachings can hear these teachings wherever you are and whoever you are. It's really important to me, and that's why I'm on all these platforms, because Rinpoche really wanted to get these teachings out. He asked me to do so, so I'm going for it. So we look at the downfalls and the benefits. Downfalls of cherishing ourselves, benefits of cherishing others, and now we engage in the very famous Tonglen, the giving and taking practice. And we actually do it in the order of taking and giving, the way that we've gone over it. And we went over it that we would first imagine our own suffering. So we would take on our own suffering, our suffering now, our suffering in the future lives, etc. Imagining all those potentialities, all the 6 realms of cyclic existence we will experience. This reinforces our mind with the renunciation. We see how a bodhisattva's renunciation is increased, right? So we are taking on our own suffering. We're almost like imagining like this emergence that's taking place of our own suffering. So imagine we're taking it on in the form of a black light into our left nostril, and we imagine we're giving ourselves all forms of happiness in a white light, exhaling through our right nostril. So inhaling our suffering in our left nostril, and exhaling happiness in our right nostril. So we get to the point where we feel full of love and happiness. We feel that we aren't fearful, right? Because if we're full of fear, then how can we give others love? So we take away our fears, we take away our sufferings, and now we feel we're at a very stable foundation from which to take others' suffering on and give them our happiness and our root virtues. So then we imagine sentient beings. And again, we look at Kamala Shila's advice. Imagine real sentient beings, not just a mass of like a football stadium of dots, real, actual, real life humans. And then, real life animals, and then you do the best you can with the rest of the realms, right? But you do your friends, enemies, and neutrals, and you imagine that you're taking on the suffering in the form of a black light. So you imagine that your friends, enemies, neutrals, you make your tonglen, your giving and taking practice bigger and bigger and bigger, right? In terms of your object of observation, more and more beings come into that picture that you're taking on the suffering of and giving your happiness to, more and more. And as you become a bodhisattva, you can realize more beings in other realms you didn't even know there were. And then you become a Buddha and you're like, and there's those other that I didn't know about, those other sentient beings. So your love and compassion, because the giving is the love and the taking is compassion, your love and compassion, and the object of observation of your love and compassion increases more and more as you become more and more realized, as you become more holy, as you become more higher on the bodhisattva grounds, and eventually become a Buddha. So your objects of observation become more and more vast. So you add them in, you add them on, you add them on, you add them on. And not to make it a meditation that takes 600 hours, right? You're working with this. This is something you're just trying to shape your mind with. So you imagine as you're taking on the suffering, this form of a black light, you can imagine almost septic water, dark water. Imagine that hair is being shaved off them, scorpions and snakes, whatever negativity, whatever the most dark negative thing it seems like you could come up with is good. So you imagine you're taking that all on into your left nostril, and you imagine that it's going down, right? If you know the channels go like this, right? It's going down, and imagine that it's just burning up your self-cherishing attitude. And sometimes they say, imagine the whole time you're doing it, there's a black dot at your heart. And when this black light hits it, it catches everything on fire and just burns away your self-cherishing attitude. And they say you can actually see it smoking. Like imagine you see just like smoking ashes, remnants of a self-cherishing attitude. And you're doing this really quick, real time. And then you imagine in a very, very strong form of love that you exhale all of your happiness and root virtues to those beings. And that you imagine that that exhale and that white light in the form of a white light that you're exhaling is transforming you. You can do it like your body that then transforms into wish-fulfilling jewels that then grant all these different kinds of beings whatever mundane and super mundane happiness they want, and frees, gets them to a state of complete happiness, gives them the things that they want. If you imagine the 8 hot hells and the 8 cold hells, imagining that you're giving them, the 8 hot hells a little bit of cool. You wish you're turning into a cool breeze, and in the cold hells you're turning into a warmth, right? In the hungry ghosts you're turning into some satiation. In the animal realms you're giving them just a little bit of freedom from fear, right? You're transforming into this, giving the generosity of freedom from fear. And the humans who have so many sufferings, because we know that all so well. You can imagine all these different beings that are experiencing sufferings, are just being relieved, and they're achieving happiness, all these things that they want. And then you're imagining that ultimately, from the highest level, that you're transforming them into the completely enlightened beings, right? Even those beings who are on the higher levels, you're imagining that obstacles, when you're taking on the suffering and you're breathing it in the form of a black light, you're imagining that those obstacles of even the higher beings are being removed. So play with that visualization, study the great Lojong texts, study with more high lamas who have very secret oral traditions, I'm seeking out more instructions to try to find out some more kind of, Lama's mouth to teacher's ear and doesn't really written down anywhere instructions around the Lojong. So never be satisfied with partial instructions, right? Always be searching for more that could enhance your meditation, because the more enhanced it is, the more your mind's being saturated with bodhicitta. Okay, so that's the taking and giving practice, giving and taking. And you can, if at first you don't want to use the breath, you can just imagine, that you're taking on suffering and giving happiness, and you're just breathing normally, and you're not connecting the two. So in some of the commentaries, it says if it just becomes like too difficult to have too many things going on at once, the sentiment of taking on the suffering and giving happiness, just sitting back and thinking, I'm taking on their suffering and I'm giving them happiness. And you can eventually, once you become more comfortable with that and second nature with that, then add the breath. It says in the 7-point thought transformation, place the two astride the breath. So that means, you will eventually utilize the breath. So you can see how, and then eventually what's really interesting when you get into the tantric teachings, you see how this Tonglen practice becomes part of, even when you're doing the mantra recitation, right? For Tara, you're imagining the light rays going to sentient beings, right? The mantra is going to sentient beings, and then the tips of the light rays going and, making offerings to all the gurus and Buddhas and bodhisattvas, then retracting. And you're imagining this coming and going, this giving and taking process that's occurring in your tantric meditations. It's not exactly the same, but you can see how this giving and taking of light rays and so forth becomes something very important. And you also, the right and left channel and the central channel and so forth becomes very important. And you begin to start to work with it when you look at the Lojong and you see, imagining that, there's this air going down and destroying your self-cherishing attitude at your heart. You're imagining it going through these channels that you're, when you look at some of the secret Lojong teachings, that your exact channels you're imagining when you're doing the visualizations for even the higher tantras. So not a topic set that I'm an expert in, but I see the relevance. So I thought I would point out some of the relevance later on. That's kind of neat, how you see that this was all very, very intelligently created for us and spoon-fed, as Geshe Dorji Damdu said. You were so lucky that we get these teachings, right, from the Nalanda tradition, and then Lama Tsongkhapa picks them apart, and Geshe La and Rinpoche and all these people, spoon feed us this, because you start to study complexity within other traditions, and you see that they don't have this rich tradition of commentary, and how easily misunderstood and how misunderstood teachings are by very qualified teachers, because they don't have the spoon feeding. That's just, we get like I don't give me the birthing pains, just show me the baby. And we don't have to try and figure out what could they possibly mean, and then come up with what could it mean, right? There's so many traditions where we don't have the spoon feeding of commentaries, right? And it's not that we're not thinking on our own, it's allowing us to think more broadly. And it's not me putting anything down, it's me just feeling so grateful for what we have. And it's just so fortunate. So now we have the actual exchange of self and others, right? So now we're thinking, we've come to this conclusion, right? Everyone's as important as me. It's bad if I cherish myself. It's great if I cherish others. Let me take their suffering on and give them my happiness. Now you've just, you've taken their suffering on and giving them your happiness, right? So what have you done? Now you've put their needs before your own. So it's not much action that's going on. The actual exchange of self and others is kind of this thing that's happening now, right? You're saying to yourself, it's kind of like a determination in a way. And sometimes like this isn't even in the same order, right? When you see the explanation of equalizing, exchanging self with others. So these aren't always even in the same order. It's not strict like the 7-point cause and effect. So if you see another presentation, you're like, well, you said 9, and it's not the same order. You'll find different orders. This is a secret teaching that they're expecting you to be like super flexible and be able to jump from thing to thing and see how cherishing others is better. Cherishing myself is bad. Everyone's as important as me. I want to take on their suffering and give them happiness. They're more, I'll put their needs before my own, right? This is all like one kind of fluid process that you're living in, right? You're taking their suffering on, you're giving them their happiness. And now you're come to the conclusion that, yes, I'll exchange my powerful desire for my own happiness and freedom from suffering with one that wants that for you. My wish for your happiness and freedom from suffering will now be stronger than my wish for mine. So this is the exchange. I've now exchanged, right? I don't become you. Very often misunderstood. Big teaching. You hear that a lot. I just become you and imagine I'm in your shoes. No. I imagine I'm me, and how would I act to you, right? What would fulfill your needs, right? So I'm not thinking like, what can I get from you? I'm thinking, what can I do for you? It's a lot different. I'm not thinking, oh, I need to be happy and free from suffering. What can you do for me to make that happen? Now I'm thinking, you need to be free from suffering and have happiness. What can I do to make that happen? I'm not even thinking about my own suffering, right, and happiness anymore. I've exchanged. My mind's changed now. That's the jung, the low, the jung and the low, the training, this change, this training that's happening. It's this change that's evolving into your needs, your happiness and freedom from suffering is more of a focus for me than mine now. It's the focus. I think that's really the best way. Interesting. That's a really good way. This focus now is different. I was focused on me, now I'm focused on you. And that's my main focus is that. So you see how this grows from it. So this is the actual exchange of self and others. My focus is switched now. Your needs, your happiness is more important than mine. And the strength, this is the key point to the Lojong. That powerful, like, I want to be happy, that powerful. Now it's that powerful at others. It's that power in there that's so important to harness. The power of that self-cherishing, self-centeredness. Think about when it's been at the highest peak in your life. Imagine if that highest peak in your life, that power was turned at everyone else. How strong that would be. And that's that change that's taken place here at this step, that actual exchange. Wow, that's something that focus now is no longer on me. I grasp at me as being truly established. I'm the greatest thing in the world. I'm so attached to me. Now it's saying you're the greatest person in the world. You're the most important person in the world. You, and you. You're the most important people in the world. Not one of you is more important than the other. And your needs are all more important than mine. And if I don't realize that, I'll never have bliss. And that's the secret in here. That if I can't get that power of self-cherishing to turn towards you, because self-cherishing doesn't produce happiness. It's not a cause for bliss. It's a cause for suffering. So if I don't take it out, then I will always be suffering. And if I don't take it out completely, the best I can get is nirvana with remainder, an incomplete kind of sitch. A high sitch. I mean, a very highly realized place, but not complete. So that's number 6, the actual exchange. And number 7, we'll go over a tiny bit, but I would like, maybe we can cover it all tonight. We have 15 minutes or something. So number 7 is kind of a special recollection of the kindness of others. So what does that mean? We went over remembering their kindness, right? When we did the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment. So we said that all sentient beings have been our mother. I mean, the real focus of that meditation is they've been our mother. But of course, the commentaries say they've been our brother, our sister, our parents, all these, and use whatever relationship you can come up with, which you saw in that role or as a being who nurtured you in your most vulnerable state. So you're really thinking of a being and then applying it to all beings and saying they've all been like this. This is the kindness you're really remembering, right? You're remembering they've all been your mother or, the kindest person to you. You remember how kind they were, right? And now you wish to repay their kindness. So you remember how kind these beings were to you. Now in this, you've got that. So you have in the special recollection of the kindness of others, you have that part in there that they've all been so kind to us in our previous lives. So that's a part that's already in there. But you also recognize that it's in dependence upon all sentient beings that I have things. So I have this blanket because of sentient beings that are strangers. It's in dependence upon others that I'm warm. It's in, I couldn't possibly go to a field, right? I don't even know what it takes to make, a blanket, but like you have to harvest something, cotton or harvest something, right? And then you'd have to turn it into some, and dye it, and then make it in a factory. Like I couldn't possibly do it. And how many sentient beings were required from harvest, planting seed, right? And then the seed before that, like the seed from the previous crop that was planted by a farmer, previous farmer. So this seed was able to plant the crop that then made the cotton or something, right? That then was able to be transformed into a blanket. So think since beginningless time, farmers have planted seeds. And now, because they've done that, I have a blanket. So you start to think in a very, very big way about how kind beings are. Think about the food as you're eating it. How did this food get to me? It came here on a truck. It was planted by a farmer. It was maybe in a different country. That seed came from a previous seed, et cetera. We already explained that, right? And how is it here? And now it's on a plate. It's somebody, how'd this plate get to me? It's clay. That's earth, right? Who did that? You start to not, and then when you start to say, well, then people have passed away who made that factory, and now their son runs it, but it's because of the kindness of that person who passed away. Where are they now? Who are they now? You start to not be able to see any being that hasn't affected you and made your life better, made you be able to have comfort, made you be able to have warmth, made you be able to be, full and not hungry. The house that you live in. Think about everything in a house. Think about all the wood, all the electrical, all the plastic, the roof, the asphalt. Just think about every single thing in a house and how it got to that house. How many sentient beings were involved in your shelter? And start to think about how many of them are no longer here that were involved in the factory or involved in the logging or even maybe planted the tree, right? Who planted that tree that made all these 2x4s? They were so kind. And now I have shelter because somebody planted a tree. When did that occur? I mean, the 2x4s, this is from the house is from the 80s, right? So we start to analyze, right? When we talk in the Lam Rim about analytical meditation, We start to analyze everything that we have and what it would take to get it to us. Geshe Dorji Damdu said, there was never a pen in the whole universe, right? There weren't things like that. There's no factories. And I had to okay, go from point A and say point B, is the pen. There's no one with enough money in the world who could make all of that occur, right? To get that process all done from start to finish. In terms of dependent origination, there's no one who could just make that all occur, even with the most money in the world. Just a pen, right? Look at what it took to get you a pen, the ink, the plastic, everything around it. So we start to see our relationship with everyone and see how kind they were to us in this magnificent way. Yes, they were all kind to us in previous lives. They've all been our mother. They've all been our brother. They've all been our sister. And they've all affected us in some way that has given us comfort, that has given us food, that has given us warmth, that has freed us from fear somehow, right? I don't have to worry about rain because I have roof stuff, because of a sentient being made roof stuff. So we start to see this interdependence in this relationship we have with beings and how kind they were to us, and couple it with beginningless lives. And then we think about also that all these beings have this Buddha nature, right? And that Milarepa became a Buddha in that lifetime, right? And was able to be the kindest being to all beings. So we start to, even though we've thought about this, you see this in both places in the Lojong. Sometimes they pick, but we see this in the equalizing self and other sections. Sometimes, like, everyone has Buddha nature, but here we see it too. That it was beings like the Buddha, right? That are let me say this again. The Buddha is a being that was like the beings in our life. That's how you say it. So the Buddha is a being that was like the beings in our life. And we all will be that being. And we don't know who will be that being first. And that being will be the ultimate kind being. So this is just another kind of abstract way to look at it. When I look at you, I see your Buddha nature, and I see your Buddha potential, and I recognize that you may be the one who will free me from my fear and give me bliss. And how kind that is. You have that. You have that in you. And as Dharmakirti says when he's quoting sutras, is that we don't know who anyone is. We're just misapprehending everything. We can only speak for our own realizations. We don't know who's a Buddha already. There's Buddhas emanating all around us to help us. So we don't know who's a Buddha. That's so kind. You're so kind. I don't know if you're a Buddha. You may be here to help me. And that helps you when you start to see somebody who's making it difficult. Oh, maybe you're a Buddha here to help me learn how to be patient. You're so kind. So you see, the Lojong isn't playing around. The Lojong starts to tear your whole reality apart to bits and pieces, tears your relationship with self and other apart, and you start to see this interdependence. You see how self can only be positive if there's other, and I posit myself in dependence upon other, and that neither one of us has true establishment, and that I'm other to them and their self. And we have this interdependent illusion, interdependence going on that looks like this, that creates this illusion that you're over there and I'm over here, and I need what I need and you need what you need, and those two don't have any relationship. But we see in the Lojong that we have every relationship and we have every need to help sentient beings. We have every need to root for other sentient beings. We should want sentient beings to be succeeding. We should be rooting for them to get to Buddhahood, right? We should be rooting for them because they can help us. They'll be the only ones. The Buddhas are the ones who can really, only ones who are reliable to help us. We should be rooting for sentient beings, not dragging them down, not waging war on them, not arguing with them, having resentments. Resenting someone who has Buddha nature, who may be a Buddha before me. So anyway, that's a special recollection of kindness of others. We see this interdependence. We also see that since beginningless time, they've been kind to us. And we really, in the 7-point cause and effect for realizing bodhicitta, it really focuses on all sentient beings are our mothers. And this, every sentient being's been our dog, been our cat. I mean, you start to like, every being that you love or find, you see every sentient being in that being, right? You see the sentient being, like I love, we all know, I love, our 4 dogs, right? You start to see, like when I see Suma come up to me, I love her so much. You start to see all sentient beings have been just like that. Not like, I don't see everyone's a dog. But, maybe that would help me. Maybe I'd be a better person and be able to navigate life a lot, better if I could just see everyone like as a dog, right? But it's true, right? Everyone has had that relationship with us. So we don't limit ourselves in the Lojong. We allow ourselves to use our own experiences and freestyle a little bit. To try to enhance this while staying in an outline and knowing what we're doing, where we're at, and using supporting commentaries to understand it. So then the next step, and I think we'll be able to end it, so I might as well, is altruism. And that's, I'll take on this task to do it myself. It's the extraordinary attitude, which is the 6th step in the 7-point cause and effect. Here it's number 8. And here it's been supported by such strong information and coupled with the great masters say it's coupled. This practice has always had, the person knew the 7-point cause and effect, or this is for just a sharp bodhisattva, right? So it's for someone who's sharp bodhisattva, who's seen emptiness, right? Or for people who have a familiarization with a 7-point cause and effect. I mean, that's what the great commentaries say. So, this special recollection, you've already kind of done this a little bit, and you've already said, I'll take on this task of freeing them all. But now that you've gotten here, and it's been supported by this special recollection of the kindness of others, this dependence you have on everyone, and now you say, now you have such a connection to everyone, I have to free them all, right? Because you have this special, there's no one I can find I'm not dependent on, I have to free them all. And then bodhicitta happens, right? So this 8th step is, I have to free them all, I can't. You always hit that wall in this like bodhicitta stages. You're always like, you're feeling so good, you're running, you're like getting it there, and then you hit a wall. I'm not a Buddha, I'm not reliable, I have to be a Buddha. And it's what thrusts you into that mind that says, I must become a Buddha for the sake of sentient beings. It's the only way that this will work. And that's the equalizing and exchanging self with others practice. That's how you would go through all the different categories. And then next week, we'll talk about how do you put these 2 practices together and do them as one meditation. And Lama Tsongkhapa shows us how to do that. And so fortunate that we have the ability to understand this information, and we're going through it. Anybody have any questions? Okay. So I'll assume I'm the only non-bodhisattva, so the joke's on me. That was a joke. Okay, 8 verses for training the mind by Geshe Langri Tamba. And again, thank you all. I joke around, but this means so much to me. And I really know that this information is something that everyone should hear. A verse for training the mind by Geshe Langritamba. With the determination to accomplish the highest welfare of all sentient beings who surpass even a wish-granting jewel, I will learn to hold them supremely dear. Whenever I associate with others, I will learn to think of myself as the lowest amongst all and respectfully hold others to be supreme from the very depths of my heart. In all actions, I will learn to search into my mind as soon as disturbing emotion arises, endangering myself and others, I will firmly face and avert it. I will learn to cherish ill-natured beings and those oppressed by strong misdeeds and sufferings as if I had found a precious treasure difficult to find. When others out of jealousy treat me badly with abuse, slander, and so on, I will learn to take all loss and offer victory to them. When the one who I benefited with great hope unreasonably hurts me very badly, I will learn to view that person as an excellent spiritual guide. In short, I will learn to offer to everyone without exception all help and happiness directly and indirectly, and respectfully take upon myself all the harm and suffering of my mothers. I will learn to keep all these practices undefiled by the stains of the 8 worldly concerns, and by understanding all phenomena like illusion, be released from the bondage of attachment. And again, imagining all the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas and sentient beings around you will make a mandala offering as a thanksgiving for the teaching. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure land. I dedicate whatever virtues I've collected for the benefit of the teachings of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losandrapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors to traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso may stay until samsara's end. May we never be separated in any of our lives from Kensur Geshe Wandak in whatever form he or she chooses to show us, whether it's the emanation body or the enjoyment body, when we're Arya Bodhisattvas. May we always in all our lives meet with this precious holy being. And when we become Buddhas, may we help Kensur Geshe Wandak free all other sentient beings. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll see you Sunday. Thanks again.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.